What do you think about The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings? I love the Lord of the Rings movies. Like, they're just absolute classics to me. Um, I remember being extremely emotional when it ended. Like, I'm an emotional person. I've learned to get like a hold on my emotions over time. Sometimes they've gotten the better of me. But I tend to feel like things quite vividly. At least it feels vivid, you know. Like I really get like immersed into stuff, especially like music. You know, you've heard me waffle on about that a lot. But you know, movies can do it as well. But when I was younger, it was always when stuff ended that I like made me really sad. And I remember walking out of like the cinema, and then all of a sudden just feeling like an immense wave of sadness because it had come to an end. And a lot of things like that, when things, chapters come to an end, you move from like one place to another or whatever it is, like can make me feel sad. And I have to really like check myself on that because it's like a bit of a trap. It's easy to just sort of fall into that way of thinking and feeling. And you don't have to feel sad about stuff ending. Like, let's say Hermitcraft ended tomorrow for whatever reason, right? The government comes in and outlaws Hermitcraft. I mean, that would definitely make me sad. It would make many of you sad. It would be tough and difficult. And I don't know if this was a very good example or not. But we can also think about all the great things that took place here. Like, the reason we're sad is because it was so great, right? To have not had this great, wonderful experience called Hermitcraft, that would be the real sadness, right? So that's the kind of way I frame things for myself now. And therefore, I don't kind of fall into that trap of feeling like strange and sad when something ends. And, you know, for me, it can be simple stuff, right? Like the end of the trilogy of Lord of the Rings. And that's dangerous because when real life stuff hits you, if you're going to be upset about that, like, geez, how are you going to handle real life stuff? So it's an important thing to have a hand on. This is like I'm just giving myself therapy. This is just X does therapy on stream with himself and a chat. Roy D Panda, thank you so much for the prime. I appreciate it. Does anyone else feel this way? So it's like, don't cry because it's over, smile because it happened. Meganox, you just put it into a quote. Well done, you. That's a beautiful way of putting it. Don't cry because it's over, smile because it happened. Beautifully put. That's my opinion on pets too. Like, you know, it'll be sad because they were so good. Otherwise, you wouldn't do it yourself. Yeah, to Buxonator, yeah, pets and people and loved ones, like, it's a similar way of thinking. It's obviously a lot harder with people, and you do have to go through grief. It's not like someone can die and you can be all smiley-wily and whatnot. Like, you go through the stages of grief, and they put it into, like, stages, don't they? There's, like, denial, and a couple of others, and grief, and anger sometimes. If you can put these thoughts in your head with simple stuff, which is easier to do, it'll perhaps help you with the real life stuff, the bigger stuff, right? It's like, you know, those thoughts ain't going to cancel out the pain and the suffering, but you'll get to that point where you'll be able to recoil and be like, hey, hang on, like, remember the good times, you know? Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. I don't remember bargaining being in there, but yeah. I mean, they could be them. I don't know if they're in the right order, just reading what's in chat here. I never got to grieve in the passing of my gran because I had so much schoolwork. It makes me sad sometimes. Yeah, it's important to grieve. I can imagine that being difficult if you're young and a family member passes, and then all of a sudden you still got all these responsibilities, right? I mean, hopefully there's something in there you could take away from that. Like, you know, you're going to have that potentially happen again. Everyone's got responsibilities, and as you get older, you get more responsibilities. And when things happen to you, you've got to learn to, like, manage them. But grieving is important. You need time to grieve. I always feel so bad that whenever I go to funerals, I don't cry. I love my grandfather, but had no real sad emotion. Same with my great uncle. I am kind of the opposite. Like, I can't stand funerals because it just, for me, it puts all of the attention in the worst place, like the hardest bit to deal with. But I think that's also the point of them, right? Like, because then when you're past that, you've had that, like, outpour of grieving. What's grieving, says Marco Rapaghi. So grieving is like being sad, suffering, crying, releasing of pent up, the tension of something bad that's burdensome. Grieving is like something that you go through. It's like a process. It's not like depression where you're constantly sad and feeling down. It's more like the part where you let out all of the grief that's built up. That's what grieving is, I guess. I've been emotionally drained of that. Lost a lot of people when I was younger, and I'm numb to it now, says Suman Shizen. Well, I hope like you haven't like numbness as in not caring. Like maybe sometimes the numbness is like the wiseness, like we were saying earlier, of you as you go through life, there's going to be more people that die, and then maybe it kind of gets easier, but you can interpret it as being numb. I mean, numb sounds kind of negative, right? Like it could be that you're numb. I'd hope it would be something a little bit more positive, because that doesn't sound like terribly healthy, right? JJB Martin says, personally, I think it is nice to have a funeral, but also a celebration of life to honor their memory. Yeah, I like it. I like it when there can be, a positive way to remember people. Yeah. Official Jaden says, dude, cheer us up. What a dark start to the stream, mate. Well, I'll let chat decide. Is this enough of that? Like, personally, I feel like just saying this stuff is like, for me, kind of like a relief. I don't know. Apparently, I've got this stuff on my chest, and I just want to get it off. I didn't know. I never know what we're going to talk about before we start streaming. It just kind of happens. It can be therapeutic, says ZLB. Yeah, I mean, that's what I was going for, right? And again, talking about the whole how you interpret stuff, right? Like, you can sit here and go, oh, it's dark, it's depressing. But it can also be enriching. It can also be something of value if you find my words of value, right? Like, there's something to be said about how we choose to interpret stuff. And I really do believe, in my experience, that how you choose to interpret things, bar the obvious, okay? If your foot's on fire, don't interpret it as if everything's lovely and dandy. Put out that fire. But when things are trivial, you can certainly reduce your own suffering by realizing when you're being needlessly irritated by things that don't even matter. Sometimes on this stream, I do silly little derpy stuff like, deliberately misplaced blocks and don't eat for ages, or, just continue mining until the very last bit on my pick, and it annoys people. And I'm trying to teach you a lesson and be like, look, it's a computer game. It's not worth worrying about. There's bigger things in life. It is better to grieve alone or with others, do you think? When my granny died, I hid from everyone for days to work through my emotions. After I was more prepared to help my family with their own grief. Very, very tough answer to question to answer. I don't think there is an answer that's universal to that, but I think you have to hold both of those things in perspective, because you might deal with it better on your own. You might actually need other people. Also, other people need you when you grieve. So, it's a balancing act, really, isn't it? I think there's this thing that Russell Brand says of like being of service to others as like a reason to do things. And so if there is, a way for you to be of service to others in times of grieving, that's quite possibly the path you should consider, for you would then be of help to others, which is in turn probably good for you. Because I think we're hardwired to want to help one another and get along with one another. Like, cooperation is a beautiful thing. I mean, look at what it's built. Look at the world around us, right? There's all this crazy stuff going on it all the time that we get hyper-focused on, but we tend to forget all the simple things that work, that we've built together and figured out and collaborated on,